Hi Leo, it's currently 6:48 a.m. Saturday, March 6, 2021. Um, this is a talk about AI. I think I'm going to call it on in artificial intelligence. And I'm just going to do a freestyle monologue about my thoughts on AI and why I think it's incredible. It's going to be massive. And our history is going to be divided into before, like superintelligence, and after superintelligence, and also why it's dangerous. Like we can't quite underestimate the power of it. But to start with, this is like when I do these types of recordings, I actually take multiple takes, and I uh, eventually settle on the one over lots of iterations, the one that I like the most. And the way I do it is sometimes, like when I'm freestyling, talking like this, if I like a part that I said, I kind of mentally save it, and then I make sure to do it on the next recording. So it's a series of like these sorts of small mutations in my speech that I keep, and just through iteration, it becomes not perfection per se, but if I kept doing it enough, I'm sure like eventually it'll be at a perfect state that I wanted it. It's about like what commonly people refer to as practice makes perfect, and that's incredible because that's essentially how AI works. Um, Except AI just has unlimited time, so it can just near infinitely keep iterating until it gets to the right place. And essentially, that's what really it comes down to. Just AI is so powerful because it has the ability to create time. It has the ability to bend time, what humans cannot have. It's like this. Us trying to solve all these problems in the world right now, like poverty, all these economical problems, political problems, health problems. It's akin to basically having like a bunch of elves or something, like um, powering an entire city, like trying to power an entire city, right? Like electricity or lights or whatever. Having a bunch of elves like individually cranking these wheels to try to generate electricity for each house. It just doesn't make any sense. Like might as well like have these elves try to research into finding like a single like inventing a generator, right, that does the work. Like create the tool to get the job done rather than do the job manually. And that's a very roundabout way of saying this. AI is the ultimate tool that humanity will ever create. And the faster we get there, the better our lives will be. But if we don't control it, like we might just end. So that's the power of it. If you look at the next 50 years, 50 to 100 years, I'll be aggressive and just say 50 years. The amount of progress that we'll be making technologically is going to be tens of thousands of times more than the last 50 years that we've had. That's just the power of the exponential curve. And I don't think people even estimate. No one can even fathom what it's going to be like. Even me, as like a futurist, right? I don't even know. I can't fathom what life is going to be like in 50 years or 100 years. I can only imagine. I think it's going to be something completely different than what we would ever imagine. I know all these futuristic flying cars and things that we envisioned in the early 20th century didn't happen. You know, we're still here. We're still stuck in traffic. But we're just still at the very, very early beginnings of an exponential curve. So just wait maybe 20, 30 years and we'll get there. And AI is going to be AI is going to be the backbone of this progress, along with concepts of like virtual worlds that I just did a long talk about, uh, and the melding of our physical and digital lives together. And again, when humans become merged with AI, that's when it starts to take a turn. And I think that's the point at which we should classify the species ourselves as a new species. Like we're currently Homo sapiens, right? I don't know how many tens of thousands of years we've been Homo sapiens. I guess before that we had Neanderthals. But really, the next machine sapiens, I don't know what to call it, Robo sapien, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Um, we are always trying to be more efficient as humans. We're tool builders. And again, this really is um, the ultimate thing. And in concept, I guess the way to put it, I think I've just been praising this. Like, if someone else watches this, they might think I'm just like obsessed with AI and like think of it as God or something. I don't think that way. I'm just simply stating uh, what could happen. And think about this analogy. Like if a human, like the elf analogy might be weird, but like this. I wrote this down in notes. If a human could only live 50 years, right? And only do one thing, like play tennis. And even if this person really sucked in the beginning, say this is like well-enabled, healthy, 20-year-old male or female, whatever it's like female, right? Okay, 20-year-old female, and she is like really bad at tennis, doesn't even know what it is, never seen a tennis ball before, and gets plopped into this sort of like tennis court, and all they can do ever for the next 50 years is just play tennis. No matter how bad this person is initially at tennis, or not, doesn't even know how to do it. If they if say they are also stuck there with like a world class, like world's best player every day, or the world's best coach, like over time, every day, it's going to like progress is going to be made, and like eventually, this person will become the best in the world if you just keep iterating enough. And like, I mean, that's not a realistic example because the person is going to get tired and like they might get injured, whatever. But like, think of this as what a typical AI does. It's given one task and it has a nearly infinite amount of time to keep iterating until it gets it right, and it has no other room to do anything else, and it has no emotion. It will never get tired. That's what we're competing against, or that's what we have at our disposal, and it's not even 50 years. Like we're talking thousands of years. And in that aspect, these simulations are a core part of progress. Like, I think this is an interesting example. Like, how, say, no one's really experimented with like different, on a mass scale, like different political structures, right? Like we have the basics. We have like capitalism, we have communism, we have socialism, all these things, and we only have the history in the past to draw from. But like modern history, we don't quite have a lot. Like it's just not nearly enough. It's like trying to backtest an algorithm and only having 5 days worth of data. You need months or years, and we just don't have that data to do or to process, and it's hard to simulate these things. Whereas if we had like massive computing power or near infinite computing power, you could essentially simulate the entire world, multiple copies of the entire world, each running different sets of experiments. Like, oh, what if the United States was communist or something, like some ridiculous thing, right? Just try it, like just mutate, and even have AI generate all these different mutations, and out of those, try to come up, like from the simulations, it figures out, oh, this system was the best. And I think that's how most human problems are going to be solved in the future, essentially. Like even cure for cancer, cure for most or every modern disease, is just going to be through immense simulations that are powered by AI that tries every fucking single thing that ever could exist until it gets it right. And each iteration, learning. I was like super impressed. This might sound super trivial later on, but like a video of someone like an AI that learned how to like run or walk. It was never ever shown human locomotion. It was just given these like muscle and bone that humans have, and it somehow was able to run, sort of like what humans run. And it's ironic and it's beautiful that after all these years of computing, it's really we're at the very, very beginning of computing itself. I mean, first computers were out, what, like 7 years ago, 8 years ago? Maybe even less. It's ironic that after all these different mechanisms, we've come back to our own brain of how humans work. And I think I wrote here somewhere that the head of one of the leading AI researchers in the world, like the founder of DeepMind, apparently came from a neuroscience background. So that proves that, like, we humans are still the best creation that the most complicated or complex, efficient system that we know of. Like we ourselves are. Whoever created us, whether it's God, whether it's evolution. Some part of me doesn't believe that we evolved from like bacteria because I think it's way too complex. But who knows? I think there is some sort of a design. But anyway, we are still the most complex system that we know. So we are finding ourselves modeling these computers after us and how we learn, how a baby learns into eventually becoming an adult, and the concept of logic and these different things that we see. And Also, another reason why humans have tended to become smarter over time, you could even say exponentially, is because of this concept of collective knowledge, um, and the speed of communication. So if, like, a researcher in China has a breakthrough in something, or in neuroscience, then another researcher in India could instantly have access to it because they maybe published a paper online and it's instantly accessible, right? And then the other person in India, the person in India essentially creates more research based off of that other research. Like, everyone's working off of each other's work, and that just wasn't possible back then. Some person might have made like a breakthrough, and the same invention ended up just being made like later on, like 100 years later, because there's just no way to communicate. But if you think about that, AI has more than faster instantaneous connection, nearly unlimited bandwidth of communication sharing. Like, if I read this paper from China, it might still take like a month to fully process or like parse it. But like AI just fully understands everything right away. So maybe these disparate AIs that are each specialized to do one thing start sharing knowledge. Like, one AI could be learning to process like security camera footage or something, right? To try to detect something. And in the security camera, it notices certain objects falling or something, and it, like, from that could infer that, hey, these objects tend to fall at this speed. Like, it's usually just constant or something. Like, even if it wasn't taught the rules of physics, it could kind of like figure it out. That, hey, this falls at this constant rate, and like this object kind of behaves this way, and maybe it also understands the concept of gravity and friction. As soon as it kind of learns that, or it could share these things against other very specialized AIs, like other cameras and doing other things, or like other AIs coded to do other things, and it just collectively builds this knowledge into something much bigger than we could even think of. Maybe it happens instantly. I don't know. Maybe that's something more of science fiction, and we shouldn't be as scared of it. But I think it's going to happen. Artificial general intelligence. We just have to merge with it before it becomes separate and kills us off. But once we do merge with it, it's going to be crazy. Absolutely crazy. We are, at that point, we really have to consider ourselves the next species after Homo sapien. Those people, or whatever they end up being, maybe it will be me later on, like everyone, maybe, like my age, maybe we all live for a very long time. Whatever it is, they're different than me now, my current self. Especially if our consciousness and identity can just be removed from this body and actually just live on a computer or something. Then merging with AI is a little bit better, because we ourselves are in the digital whatever state that AI is running in. The other way is to merge that into us by decoding the human brain and all the inputs, basically reverse engineering it, and then sending those signals, like having AI feed into our brain. But we have to accept it. I think whatever we create becomes us as tool builders. We are defined by our tools. And I keep checking because sometimes last time I recorded for like 20 minutes and found out that like it had shut off after 5 minutes. I was so mad. Because of tradition and culture, AI's advantage. I wrote here that AI's advantage is that it doesn't give a shit about tradition or culture or feelings. I don't know why I wrote that, because it's not an advantage. It's purely optimized for efficiency. This is both good and bad. Okay, I said it's bad. That is one thing that at least I have hope in humanity, is this idea of culture. But funny enough, AI could also learn that. But just by it knowing doesn't mean that it feels it. So AI could definitely sufficiently like create art. That's it still exists today, even this early on. And I would still call it art. But I wouldn't say the robot actually felt what it created. Even if someone could simulate feelings, and robots understand how to act in certain situations and sort of all it's doing is copying. It's basically replicating what it's seeing, but it's not like actually understanding. And I wonder if that could ever change. I think it. I think maybe it could. Maybe at a certain point, it really does feel that way. So to recap, AI will solve most of our big problems, not humans. It is the engine. That's the generator that we create. And through excessive, near infinite amount of iteration, humans, or AI and humans, could achieve perfection just through massive, massive quantity of iteration and learning with positive reinforcement. And that brings me to the conclusion of how I'll achieve this, or everything that I want to achieve and bring humanity forward, one way or another, just by keep trying. And maybe one form isn't going to work, then I just have to keep iterating and iterating and iterating and trying at different angles. First, I want to start with Omni, really make a big indent in our lives and improve our lives, make more things possible. And then shift attention to maybe more the brain jacking stuff, brain computer interaction, and more AI related stuff. Because really the two combined would be immense. Virtual worlds and like just reality, augmented reality and virtual reality paired with artificial intelligence. I'm getting carried away here. This is probably way too long to even record, but to parse or edit. But I just wanted to have it in case I want to take some clips of it later. I think I'll upload the Metaverse one now. But until then, I'll see you later.